There's a verse in the Bible where Jesus is talking about the way God's people would be identified. And, it's a great question for Christians. Someone posed it to me this way, and I couldn't answer it the first time it was asked. And like, how do you think God's people are to be identified? And I was like, well, they're good people, and they are, they go to church and they're righteous, and for sure they do right by people. Yeah, but what does God say? And I mean, he lays it out very clear. He's like, they shall be known for their love one for another.
All right, everybody, thank you, and welcome back to our Speak Life podcast, where we're sowing seeds today for tomorrow's harvest. I got my dear friend, good buddy, Gabriel Ericson-Singh with me today. And man, does this guy have a resume. I'm excited to have him in studio. Your work has preceded you, my brother. You have done some amazing things in the community, and you spent 15 years working in the inner city programs in Chicago, working with the youth ministry down there, becoming a ministry leader. You've traveled. Your travels have taken you to Ghana, Pakistan, Liberia, just to name a few, for your missions work to build orphanages for families in need. That's been amazing. I heard about that, but we're going to get into that. You also have a degree from Hales Anderson College for missions and a master's in theology. So this is really what you do, right? And you're the co-founder of 320 Life Solutions, a full-service life insurance agency where you're pouring life into people every single day. I mean, so it'd be fair to say that service precedes you. It's in your blood, and it's why you're here today. And we want to kind of get into it, some of the things that you're doing to sow seeds. And obviously, even at a young age, you've sown quite a bit of seeds, and that you've seen harvest, and you've got more to come. So welcome to the podcast, brother. How are you today?
Dude, thank God, man. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm doing great. I'm honored to be here. I'm really excited to talk about these things that mean so much to me, and honestly, God has just blessed me so much in my life. So
praise God, man. So give us a backdrop, Gabe. Give us a backdrop of your upbringing. Like, what got you to this place? Like, I don't know. Maybe servants are born, right? Maybe someone puts something inside of them. Maybe a switch goes off at a certain age. How did you get to this place where, let's just say 15 plus years ago, you decided, hey man, I'm going to get involved here and I'm going to make an impact and make a difference?
I think that, there's a verse, I think a lot of people will be familiar with it, and even it's different like forms and sayings, to whom much is given, much is required.
Amen.
I think so much has been given to me. If you were to take an objective look, take my name, but just put my situation into it, you'd be like, well, I would hope this guy would go and do something, because a lot has been invested. I was born in California, grew up in Columbus, in the
really?
city. Mm-hmm.
How long were you in California before you moved to Columbus?
Like less than a year.
Okay, got it.
Born, and then my mom
got
moved.
it. No one I never heard of the California. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. And my mom, extremely hard worker, dedicated mother, but got sick pretty seriously very young. I think I was about 6 or 7. She contracted cancer for the first time. She would get it 3 more times before I graduated high school. Wow. So basically, my entire childhood, I only really ever knew my mom sick.
Wow.
Receiving cancer treatments in bed. She'd get up, cook, clean, and then have to be in bed the rest of the day.
Wow.
And but even in that, I can say, because I grew up in a very impoverished community, tremendously blessed. She really lived sacrificially. I mean, I remember times that she would go and, get up, clean, and we were down so bad, she'd go and give plasma.
Wow.
And to provide.
Wow.
And really loved me, really believed in me, and I was a rough case.
Like so many of us.
I think before I hit high school, I'd been kicked out of 5 schools.
Wow. Now, was your father involved at all?
No, not at all.
Single mom upbringing. Mm-hmm. Okay, got it.
And around that time, so when I was very young, a local church that would have a similar ministry that I would later be a part of came in, picked up kids to go to church. I think week 1, I punched a kid in the face for like an oatmeal pie. They were giving them out, and I guess I felt like I should have 2. And so they did not pick me up anymore. But the choir director and his wife really took a shine to me. And they would come and personally, because the bus wouldn't pick me up anymore. Wow. They came and picked me up in their car.
Okay.
And that would be like an on and off thing over the years.
Got it. What age was this?
I probably came the first time when I was about 9 years old.
Got it. Okay.
And my mom was happy for it because, she was in a tough spot and wanted me to go to church. And it never really made an impact right up until I was 15 years old, just going through a very formative time in my life, kind of making the decisions where I wanted to go. And, I think God just like introduced that relationship again, and it really made an impact. And, this family, I couldn't say enough about them. Like they, paid for me to go on like a youth trip, bought me, I would be like, oh, I don't have dress clothes, I don't have a Bible. Bought me dress clothes, bought me a Bible, paid for the trip. The wife, packed little snacks for me. The husband gave me spending money. And then we came back and I was like, I think I want to be a Christian. I think God has something for me in my life. And they paid for me to go to a private Christian school. And so just a tremendous investment from them.
Wow.
And then the youth pastor kind of took me under his wing. I became like his project, And they said we'll pay for your tuition if you stay and you clean around the church and the school, and I would do yard work, I'd mow, and honestly, the men of the church, they taught me how to work because no one ever really taught me before. And that was a huge investment in my formative years.
This isn't fascinating. Give me the age frame we're working in.
So when all this happened, it would be 15
Got it.
on. Okay. So I was just going into high school.
Got it. So at that point, would you say you were in service, or were you still being reared and poured into?
I think it was both. Like definitely in that flavor of Christianity, very service oriented, because it was all about like, hey, you're going to come to church 3 times a week. Saturday, we go out, we invite people. And then Sunday, I'd get up with the youth pastor, like I said, it was a project. We'd go and we'd pick up kids for church, and, I'd sing songs. And from a young age, I was a Sunday school teacher. I was teaching like kindergartners as a 17-year-old.
Okay.
And so both very much.
It's amazing, man. Like, it's very touching, this story. I mean, because we're a product of the village, right? We're a product of, the people that have poured into us. And there were people there were people that were watching over you when your mom could not.
Yeah.
And they took a liking, or they took a responsibility to make sure the seeds that were planted in you would be seeds that would germinate. Like, it wasn't even like, hey man, this is like a really cool kid. Yeah. It's almost like there was something on your life, and they knew it. Yeah. And they wouldn't let you shake that, and they wouldn't let you not, fulfill that. That's what it sounds like. Is that how it felt?
That's a beautiful way to say it. I mean, I remember a very early childhood memory was spending time with my mom, I think watching a movie, and we're watching some movie. And like I said, my dad, very brief part of my life when I was very young that he was a part of it, and then was not a part of it at all. And I remember just watching a movie and saying something to my mom, being like, seeing a family, like, Mom, where's my dad? And my mom being overwhelmed, like, to give a response to that. And she said, well, God's going to be your dad.
Wow.
And I have felt that throughout my entire life. And when you talk about this community, I think that is just the gift, the fulfillment of a promise that my mom knew God was making. And now I see all throughout the scripture, that he's there for the fatherless.
Wow.
And, he was there for me.
Wow.
And has been and still is.
That's incredible, man. So all this stuff is taking place. You know, your path is being set. You may not even know it at this point, but you're starting to give back, and you're receiving and giving, right? And now you're entering to this place where that transition is going to take place because there are kids coming in that now need to receive. Yes?
Yeah.
And was that voluntarily? Like, were you excited about that? Or were you like, man, I just kind of got to do this, or like I'm obligated, or where were you at?
That's a great question, because not only was I excited, you know, it's kind of like where you if you're in a household, you know, if your dad was like maybe really involved in sports, you would expect the
great
son
analogy.
coming up to be just as like pumped about the sports and wanting to even maybe fulfill the role of his dad living vicariously through him. Like the son would be happy to do that. For me, growing up with my community, being my youth pastor, the staff members, the choir director, all these people, not only was it something I was excited to do, it was in my mind the way I would prove myself to I think to them, and I think also to God.
Okay, so why did you feel the need to prove yourself?
I think it's a combination. And I'd be lying if I was saying 100% sure that, you know, anytime man's motivation is involved, it's not always 100% pure. I think because there was a part of it that I wanted to make good on the investment, but I think I also wanted to quiet any naysayers that I felt like might have been. Because like I said, I was troubled youth.
So we're talking friends, potentially, teachers, people that have doubted you.
Yeah. And so when I came to college, so I decided I wanted to go to a ministry college.
Okay.
And the ministry college I went to, of course, had a huge inner city Chicago, bringing thousands of kids. And I remember thinking, I want to be really good at this.
Wow.
Like I want to have the same effect in someone's life that someone had in mind. Like I was looking for that.
That's
off
amazing.
The bat. I wanted it bad.
And how old were you at this time?
I was 19 turning 20.
19. Okay. So cool. So this kind of, obviously we talk about sowing seeds, and we can all see the analogy here of the seeds that have been sown in you. And, you know, obviously the people that sowed seeds in you certainly, and they're not just sowing seeds in Gabe's saying, they're sowing seeds in a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always work out, Gabe.
Yeah.
But you decided that you wanted to prove to them that, hey, you didn't waste your time on me, number one. And number two, all the naysayers, all the doubters, watch me work.
Yeah.
Cool. That was your motivation. Cool.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, inside of you birthed this passion for wanting to be great at serving others.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay. So talk to us. Take us down the path of this ministry walk, or this missions type work you start to do and getting involved in the inner city.
Sure. So all throughout high school, very involved. I'm always helping, like, you know, we'd call each, typically these ministries would be split up into like little groups. Like each bus would have called a bus captain, and then the workers, and then the driver. So I was always like a worker helping people out. And I remember as a teenager, I'd be like, man, someday I'm going to be a bus captain. You know, I'm going to lead this whole deal. And I remember I got my first chance when I was like a senior, like somebody wasn't able to fulfill some role. And like the first day, I'm not gonna lie to you, Mark, it was like a disaster. Like these two kids got this big fight, and like this little old lady that was so sweet came up, I was like distressed and like crying. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so bad at this. and I remember going to college, I wanted to be so much better. And how the college ministry works was really unique, because typically in a church, this is just people, laymen who want to get involved. Be like, I'd love to be a part of that ministry. But in college, and because ministry college, it was like a competitive environment, because you had to recruit the workers. You had to convince them to come with you. And so if you were good at it, you might have 15. If you were bad, it might have just been you. Knocking all alone.
This is telling me so much.
Right. You probably understand why our group is the way it is now.
Yeah, right.
And so again, off the bat, freshman. So I came in and I wanted to, how that would work all Saturday. It was a weekend ministry. Get up, go to Chicago, invite people, families. Sunday, wake up 5 o'clock, get on a cold bus, go pick kids up, which would be an hour and a half trek one way, bring them back for the church service. You're doing a program, singing, teaching the whole time, do Sunday school, come back, take them back to Chicago. Then you have a little break time in the afternoon, bring the kids back for a night service.
Wow.
And then take them back to, and then that would be like, usually the older teenagers would be on that bus. So that was a little bit of a different, family was more like oriented. The evening was more like, usually one worker would preach a sermon that was like more meaningful to the kids, drop them off. And then all the workers drive back, which was at least an hour to a 2-hour drive.
Wow.
So you're getting back 12, 1, 2 o'clock Monday morning with classes the next day. And I remember I just gave it everything I had. And I impressed the ministry leader, who's the youth pastor for the church. I was in his division. And my second semester, he's like, I want to make Gabe a bus captain, which was normally like a junior or senior thing.
Got it.
So I remember my mom, who eventually, she didn't come to church with me at first, but by this time she'd been coming to church. She took a video of the home church announcing that I'd become a bus captain.
Wow.
And people cheered.
Wow.
And I remember that made me feel incredible. Because it felt like that validation that I was looking for.
I see.
And then so I get into that role, and I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm not very good at that at the beginning either. I think it was me. All I could recruit was me and one guy and one girl who felt bad for me. So that's why they were with me. And it got to a point where, it was a very taxing schedule. You're in school full time, you're working a full-time job.
Right.
Because you obviously want to go to a ministry college like that, there's typically not assistants. And you are, doing the full thing on the weekends. And I was having a tough time, and I considered whether or not I would give up. I was like, I don't know if I'm just cut out for this. And by that time, I had gotten a couple kids, and one in particular who's a close friend to this day, who was like me when I was a young guy. And I remember thinking, I can't leave. I can't let this kid down.
That's strong.
And that is what, so I think the motivation to prove myself brought me there. Yeah. But it switched to where I can't, this is a real person. Right. And they're looking at me and I can't leave, and that's what kept me.
Hey, that's good, brother. So that started to live inside you. Yeah. It was no longer work. Yeah. That's when it became ministry in its own right. Yeah. That's when you owned it. Yeah. And it was you realized that you needed to do for this one individual what was done for you. Now, you were doing that with a bunch of people. Yeah. Right? Probably a bunch of people doing that with you.
Yeah, 100%.
And you can't take a liking to every single person in life. Right. And that doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just means, you're going to have your people, right? So you're going through this. And how do you see your faith being activated in that role?
I think two aspects. I think the first, there's a verse in the Bible where Jesus is talking about the way God's people would be identified. And, it's a great question for Christians. Someone posed it to me this way, and I couldn't answer it the first time it was asked. And how do you think God's people are to be identified? And I was like, well, they're good people, and they are, they go to church, and they're righteous, and for sure they do right by people. Yeah, but what does God say? And he lays it out very clear. He's like, they shall be known for their love one for another. And I think that community that's the whole purpose of the church. And I think having that, being a young man too much ministry was about proving myself for too long.
Got it.
Like, and it took me, honestly, a couple years into college before I had those relationships where I realized this was not a platform for me to prove myself, that these are real people. And I think that was very transformative for my faith.
Wow.
Like, and I would go to create my strongest relationships because I really didn't have those before then. Because when it was about performance, I really cared what people thought about me. And so I was always very guarded.
Got it.
But when it wasn't anymore,
Wow.
I actually started creating the deep friendships. So I think that was the first one, the first part. And then secondly, you feel your inefficiency when you deal with people. I mean, man, during my time, I was in a very rough part of Chicago. During my time in ministry, there 5 kids that I brought to church were murdered.
Wow.
And, you know, you're sitting in a funeral service, the family is crying.
What's that reality? That's devastating.
Yeah.
What's that reality like? You're working with these kids. You understand they're going home to rough situations. You're trying to be a beacon of light or hope in some capacity. The ministry you're involved in, same thing. You're bringing them to something, right? And then one day you walk in, they don't come. Yeah. And you found out they got murdered.
Yeah.
What is that like?
You realize that it's not you doing something in their life because you can't.
Wow.
You realize it's not you. You realize God needs to be a part of this and that you need to step out of the way. And that furthered my relationship with God.
Wow.
Because I was like, these guys don't need to come and hear my opinions. They really don't. Like what I think about this or that, they need to see 2 things. That they need to see me having a genuine walk with God. And at that time I was less scared of people seeing my faults. And I actually had the youth pastor of the church gave me some very wise advice. He's like, Gabe, don't get up and preach your strengths. Get up and preach your weaknesses.
Are strong.
And I think, so them seeing me and others live genuine Christian lives is what they needed. And they also needed to see as much as possible, you know, God and the Holy Spirit, like through me. And that convicted me to get up and pray and, you know, read my Bible extra in times that I wouldn't, like the motivation to be help from somebody, but no, it couldn't be you.
Wow. That's deep, bro. That's deep.
And it's an incredible thing to be able to look back at times and think, wow, God really worked in that situation. Because before, when it was about me, I would have really liked to impress you, to be honest. I would have wanted you to be like, oh, Mark, I brought 100 people to church today. Like, wow, Gabe, that's great. And I would have loved that. And I think that probably has its own place. Like you're doing a good thing, but it shouldn't be about that. It shouldn't be about you being impressed with me. It should be being about what God did. And when you saw that, it felt so much better because like you're like, okay, this is real. Like, because 100 kids coming to church doesn't translate to 100 kids' lives being transformed. But that's what you wanted to see.
And that's where the real work came in, right? Like that's where you got your fingernails in the dirt.
Yeah.
And hey, if you brought 100 kids or however many, obviously you've done a good job getting them there. And then the real work kicked in.
Yeah.
You know, when we talk about that work, we talk about transformation, or we talk about, you know, planting or sowing seeds of hope. What did that work look like?
A big part of it, funny enough, was just the time. You know, when we would go, like the kids and families that would get closer, you know, eventually they would start going out with me, you know, and the other workers to invite people to church. So they're spending time with you all day Saturday, all day Sunday. So I mean, you're spending pretty much a solid 2 days with your community of workers. And that was a big deal, them seeing that and getting that, because it's an introduction, just like it was for me as a kid. Like, Mark, my community growing up, like I grew up in a fatherless community. Like I wasn't the only kid without a dad. Probably 9 out of 10 kids in the neighborhood where I grew up didn't have a dad.
Got it.
And so to go from that to a different community where everyone thought about things different was, I think, what really transformed me. as a young man. And I think that was a big part of it. And then 2, investing where you could. Like someone invested me to go to a Christian school. The church that I went to also had a school. And when a kid was getting serious and wanted to make some changes, typically you try to say, hey, would you be open? And then you're raising a school bill for somebody because you're a broke college student trying to pay your bills, work at an entry-level position, 40 hours a week while you're going to school and doing this in ministry, and now you got to come up with $200-300 a month for this kid. But I mean, God always provided, it seemed like it, in sometimes miraculous ways.
Wow. I mean, that's amazing work, and obviously very gratifying, And then at some point in your ministry walk, you transition into, building orphanages and seeing the value in that. Obviously, it sounds like your passion is leading you towards kids, and I could be wrong. Can you explain how you got there? Like, what door opened for that opportunity for you, and why did you dive in?
Yeah. So I think. I can't tell you where the original thought came from, and maybe it was purely God planted. But I remember even in college being like, man, having like a orphanage, like that's really needed. Like that'd be a great thing to do. But in like the far off, like golden years, like maybe if I invest money well and I have extra money in my 50s, 60s, 70s to be able to do something like that, if God would like let me do that. And then when I got done with my bachelor's, I started my master's in West Africa because I went for a missions degree. And when I was there, it was an incredible ministry, and the pastor there did a great job. He's like, Gabe, literally tell me what you want to do, and because there's a huge ministry. And he's like, and I'll empower you to do it. Like I was like, well, I'd like to try a little bit of everything. And so I taught in their school there, and they would go to like new church startups. They had like 40 church plants, and I'd help out with those. And they had like a little media team for a program they did there in Ghana. And then I really loved, in Ghana, they're very, very open to the public schools to have someone come in and preach. They have like a chapel day in public schools in Ghana. But they especially love foreigners who speak English well. Because in Ghana, they want you to learn English. It's the business language, of the world. They're like, you got to learn this to go. And so they wanted me to come, and they wanted me to speak English. So like places that weren't even open doors to maybe a lot of Ghanaians, they'd be like, oh, well, someone who speaks English really well is going to come. Like, come on in. And I love that. I had a great time, like, going there and, like, playing games with the kids and teaching. And I loved it so much. And so that became, after, like, a few weeks there, I was like, can this be, like, my main thing? And he's like, yeah. I mean, we need someone to do it. We always use help. Yeah, go ahead and do it. And towards the end, so I spent probably the majority, I was there for about 3-4 months. Spent the majority of my time there doing that. As we're getting ready to leave, one of the staff members says to me, hey, we had this thing a couple years ago. We went around to the different orphanages. There's 6 in Kumasi that were good size. And we gave like presents and gifts to the kids. Would you like to go do that? And I was like, that sounds like a great time. Let's do it. And we went, and it just bothered me so much, the stuff that kids were asking for. Like I thought like toys and candy, but these guys are asking for like necessities. And I remember thinking, walking away from that, I was like, man. And I even said something to, and not to bash, anybody, but I remember talking to one of the staff guys, like, what do you think? And he grew up there in Ghana. And I was like, he's like, I'm sure money is being, it's not probably all going where it needs to for these things. And it really bothered me. And when I was leaving, the pastor, Ted, came up to me. He's like, if you came back, what would your, like, full time, because they were wondering maybe if I would, and I was wondering if I would. They're like, what would you want to do? I'd love to have an orphanage ministry here. And I was like, have you ever thought about that? He's like, I'd love to, but we don't have, you're talking to missionaries who live off $10,000-15,000 a year that they raise from churches who support them.
Sure.
And so that was like in my heart. And I didn't know what form it would be. I never imagined, to be honest, the way that things have happened, that they would happen like they did. Because, I mean, dude, I was checking my bank account every time before I went out to eat to make sure I had money to order the food.
Right.
And to think that that it has happened like it's happened. I mean, just thank God. And then, so that stayed in my heart for a couple years. I went back, was a ministry leader now over a division, and I really love that. And the beginning of 2020, it was like, I can't even explain it, a switch flipped. And I was like, this is the year.
Wow.
Like, it needs to happen. And I even told Ted, I messaged him. I was like, can I start, like, in your name, raising funds for this? And start, like, getting a plan together, what this would look like. And a month later, I started it in the insurance business.
Wow. Wow. It's funny how life, has these intersections.
Yeah.
And a lot of these intersections are the birthing
Yeah.
of something huge. Dude, so, you've told the story about this trampoline, and I think it's pretty fascinating, but I think there's some value in it. Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm there with a group coming to visit the orphanage for the first time. I've seen eyes through pictures and videos, but never actually physically been there. So we go, we see where the kids are living, and we're like, I came with some expendable money. Like, I want to get like some toys and stuff for these guys. And so I ask, the Rancy, him and his wife, who are overseeing it, and then Ted, I'm like, what should I get? And they're like, oh, the kids will love soccer balls and maybe some jump ropes, anything like that. So we go, and I was like, I got to do some big ticket. Like, I came with something to do something. And I see they have a giant trampoline. And I was like, there's room in that backyard for a trampoline. And so we go get that. And I remember even Ted was like, oh, that's too much. Like, that's a lot. I was like, no, I brought it for this. And we're getting together, and you could tell he was like unsure like about it. And then we went, and then as we're putting it together, for one, the kids are, because at that time there was like 30 something kids. They're all just circled around watching us like put it together. Like every movement, like they're right on top of you putting it together. And then we get on it, and they are just like, my time in Ghana, I never saw a trampoline anywhere. Right. So I don't think these kids had ever seen one. And so we're like, come on, like, and like we're getting up and like we're jumping a little bit, and they would get on and they'd be like, like unsure, and then just like kids do, start doing it, falling, laughing, and then jumping. And a couple of them are like, one of the guys with me, Ryan, does a flip, and the kids are like, whoa, and they're like they're trying flips, and they're laughing at each other, and I was like, man, this is maybe one of the purest moments I've ever been a part of in my entire life.
Wow.
Like seeing these kids who'd never seen a trampoline, and now be like, well, this is ours.
Wow. That's pure, bro. That's amazing, man. Yeah. Just amazing. So, it's fair to say that the passion you have for these kids is just, that's kind of where your heart bleeds.
Yeah.
And seeing frowns turn into joy. Is that fair?
Yeah, 100%.
That's awesome. What got you involved in the life insurance industry?
So I had just finished up my master's, and I was still very involved. Like I said, I was running that ministry now. And I'd have been in sales, direct sales of some kind. That had just been the perfect gig for me because I was so busy with school to be able to do sales 4, 5, 6 hours. And I was like, what am I going to do? Like, I need to find, and I was like, for the first time in my life, I was like, I need to start making some serious money.
Did you know what serious money was, though?
To me.
And that's, yeah, right? Like, I can hear you saying that at that age. And what's serious money?
Honestly, if I had broken 6 figures in a year, that would have been.
Right, got it.
Like that would have been like, oh, I can live off 30 and I can give another 70.
Right, yeah. But because you've never done that, right?
Right.
Got it. Go ahead. At that point, yeah.
And I was looking, my girlfriend at the time was doing real estate. And I wasn't super impressed with what she was making. A couple friends, because that made sense to me. I was like, oh, real estate, there's a lot of money. But I just didn't know anybody that was making a lot of money. And I was renting a home in Hammond with a friend, and he walked in one day, and he was a couple years older than me and graduated. And he said, I felt like he was doing well financially, and had just bought a place, was about to get married. And I was like, "What do you do for work?" And he's like, "Oh, I do insurance part time." I was like, "Insurance?" I was like, someone had tried to recruit me to some LLM a couple times during college, and I was like, that's what I had in my mind. I was like, well, how much money do you make? And he had told me that he had made a few grand doing that, and I was like, well, maybe I should look at insurance.
Wow.
And so that's how I literally just went on, bought the test.
From that conversation, you got licensed.
Yeah.
He didn't recruit you to anything.
No.
I love it. Okay.
No. Like, so I found the test and I started taking it.
Okay.
And then another friend, that guy's brother, Caleb, had found a local place.
Got it.
And was like, oh, I think I'm going to go here.
Got it.
And he's like, oh, you should come with me.
Got it.
And so that's how I started. And as a captive agent, that place was. I'm glad we had each other at that time, because that was not the environment we should have been in. But after that, for a brief stint there, 6 months, started our own place in the IMO.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, and I've watched what you've done with 320 Life Solutions, and you co-founding that. Now, when you talk to me about this recruiting deal, back in the day, when you're recruiting people to come to this ministry, you're recruiting other college students to help serve.
Yeah,
it all makes sense, brother.
Right.
Because you might be one of the best recruiters I've ever met, period, based on the work you've done at 320 Life Solutions and what you've done with your life agency, watching you build this agency full of studs and studettes of people that you knew.
And I gotta give you, I would be remiss to not really tell you what recruiting like was. Let me just give you a 2-minute explanation. So, opening day of college, like basically wherever somebody goes that first weekend in that environment, they're gonna go. So hundreds of new people coming in, you're meeting them right after they're getting checked in. You're like, hey, Mark, I'm gonna help you to your room. and you get all their luggage to their room and be like, hey, let's exchange phone numbers. Hey, we're doing this thing. Oh, by the way, Mark. So you had to make it feel so natural, because people knew like kind of what was going on. So you had to do like, oh, by the way. And I would like name drop a few of the church staff like they were like going to. And I would be like, yeah, by the way, we're doing this on the weekend. Would you come this one weekend, just one time? Because I knew if I came, they came one time. They were in. A lot of people did it, but dude, I would get up 7 a.m. and I would do that all day and I was knocking on the people I missed. I'd get a list of the dorms they were in, and I'd go knock and I'd find you.
Wow.
I'd be like, hey, Mark, did you get all checked in and everything good today? Did anyone talk to you about the weekend? And so, yeah, dude, when it came to timed insurance, this was child's play.
Dude, it's funny. Dude, it's funny because, and I didn't do this for the Lord, but when I was in college, I went to culinary school, and they didn't have a football team.
Okay.
So flag football became the thing. Like, you got off the bus.
Right.
And we would play tackle football on the green a couple nights a week, 6, 7 o'clock. It'd be a bunch of guys out there just playing straight up tackle football.
I love it.
Now, listen, that was not a league.
Right.
The league was a flag league.
Okay.
So, you got all these freshmen joining the league, and they're all just kind of joining teams.
Right.
Right? So I get recruited to go play, and I'm on a team with a bunch of guys I don't know.
Right.
And there were some teams that were already there, and they dominated the league.
Sure.
They dominated the league. So I got, like you, I got pissed.
Right.
I wanted to be of service. So I decided that after that season was done, I was going to walk the entire campus, walk the dormitories, and find the best players from those freshman teams and put a team together.
I love it.
And then we were going to build a freshman team that was going to knock off these juniors and seniors of these fraternities that had these teams sewed up. They would go to the games, they'd mollywop fools, and go downtown and drink beers.
Yeah.
And that really ticked me off because we were better than them.
Right.
But we were all dispersed out into different teams. Mm-hmm. So I recruited flag football people like you recruited people to come in ministry. I literally would get on the bus and say, who wants to play flag football? It's 40 people on the bus. Then when I found players or I got a referral from you to this one or that one, I'd go find their dorm. I go, what dorm are they in? I'd stalk the dorm. I go, you know this kid? What room is he in? And I would knock on his door and I would literally go, hey man, what's up, dude? I saw, and I would totally recruit them to play flag football. And it reminds me so much of your story.
That's it.
Different strokes for different folks.
Yeah.
But
that's it. That's the
that was
spirit,
it,
man.
right? And that's what made me a good recruiter in insurance. But I love it. So you said recruiting people in insurance was child's play.
Yeah.
And I love that because it was really birthed inside of you. You had done the hard work you did when you, oh, by the way, like that's
right.
That becomes hard until it becomes easy.
Right.
Because you know how many people don't want to do that?
Yeah.
You know what
Most
I'm saying?
people, yeah.
So you birthed a bunch of people in the insurance business by recruiting them and showing them what the model looked like. What was your vision? What was your vision in business?
In the beginning, it's so funny looking back because, you just, at every step, it feels like you learn more, like you understand more about your own business and you see kind of what other people do. So it's just such a transformative, these last few years in the insurance industry, I feel like a kid who, like, when I started, I was not even a freshman in high school. I was in middle school looking at the high schoolers. And now I feel like I'm in high school and I kind of got my feet a little bit, but I'm still figuring it out. And so I think when I started very simply, as far as just core, I'm like, number one, I need to get that orphanage done. That honestly was the number one for me.
Wow.
Like because before I had started, I had like committed to do that, and I felt very, very strongly that, there's a verse in the Bible where David talks about God gives him the strength to bend a bow of steel in his arms. And I'd heard that preached on as, God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. And that's what this felt like to me. I was like, wow. I cannot explain this any other way besides God put this on my heart. Like, this needs to happen right now. And a month later, I'm making more money than I've ever made in my entire life.
Wow.
Like, that really was number one. Number two quickly became, just like the evolution from the ministry becoming performance to being about people, I kind of, I don't know how to use it, foolhardily brought in all these people that really actually meant something to me.
You laugh. That's so funny that you're laughing. What is wrong with you, man? You mean you actually cared about the people you recruited? That's a good thing. You're so sinister. What's wrong with you?
You talk about Mindy, Matt, Joe, Sean, all these people. I can go on that brought in, and I'm like, man, like, you get that first call that maybe they're struggling or going through a tough time or unsure or had a rough day, and you're like, oh my gosh, I brought these people into this. We gotta do this. We gotta make it happen.
Sure.
And dude, that was a gift from God because it pushed me. To be honest with you, Mark, when you come from very little appeases you. Like, my appetite was not heavy.
Right.
Like, once I needed to stop looking at my bank account before I went to Chipotle, I would have been satisfied. But the fact that these folks came in, they needed help. My goal quickly became making sure that they were successful. And so I felt like it became like a surrogate, like parent, like, well, what's your dreams? Mark, what do you want from this? I'm like, okay, well, I need to help you do that.
Wow.
And this is an incredible industry to where that was a tremendous blessing to me as well, to help those folks achieve their dreams.
Amazing, dude. I mean, amazing. I mean, your story is far from written. I mean, you got some tread on the tires, but not a lot. I mean, how old are you right now?
33.
33. So you're at a very young age impacting. You've impacted probably most of your life, but tangibly half your life. You've impacted people with the heart to do it, which is amazing. And this story is a testament of your desire to sow seeds at all costs. And I've when you were putting people in the car and trying to help them get where they wanted to go selflessly on your own dime, and watching and helping them learn how to sell policies and work with people, and just that never returned void. That is still germinating right now.
Yeah.
Still building, still growing a harvest right now, which is unbelievable.
It's crazy.
Amazing. We were at that grand opening not too long ago, and it's just, look at the work.
Yeah.
This all started because you and Caleb said yes, and you, Joe, and Caleb kind of pushed this thing forward. But then you've got all these people that are doing such great things, and then doing the exact same thing you did, which is recruit their friends, right, and care about them, right? Amazing work, brother.
It's a blessing, man. It's really like that verse. I think about that verse a lot in the life of David. Think of all the amazing things that he did. And if you really break it down, it wasn't him. Like, did David kill Goliath? I mean, he did, but it was God.
It was God, yeah.
There was a man of war. He was a giant. This is a boy. Like, it was God. And that's how I feel when I look at, you talk about that grand opening, and even just the people there, see, Mindy's sister, Christy, and see the way she provides, and David and his sister, and single mom just doing all these amazing things, and that group there, and just how they're encouraged, what they want to do for their family, and give, how they give to the community. It was like, I feel like it was like God came in and said, hey, I'm going to let you, I got this thing for you, but I'm going to let you be a part of some other people's things too. And that is incredible, because it's not me. I couldn't have done it. I couldn't have done it. God gave me, Ephesians 3:20. He's able to do exceedingly abundantly and more above all that we ask or think.
It's amazing. When you think about your life, your years in service, what was one of the most challenging things or the most challenging moments for you?
That's a great question. Like, not unlike this industry, I think some of the beginning years of what I did in ministry were the hardest, even though I was handling the least, which is funny. When I was, it was just me, and I just had a couple workers, and I was picking up a handful of kids, and I was discouraged because, I probably had like a route that was like, I don't know, 10 by 11 blocks, and I'm running it on a Sunday morning because the worker that had a car left, and I'm going on running with dress shoes that have holes in them because I'm a broke Bible college student, and I'm tired and discouraged, and I'm wondering, like, man, like, am I cut out for this? Like, maybe I should just give up. And it's to know what was on the other side of that door. Like, I'm just so glad I didn't, because I never knew. I didn't have any guess. You have tunnel vision in those situations. You can only see what's in front of you. And I could barely see it getting better. And I just kept going because I felt like it was what God wanted me to do and what I needed to do. And it just like, it went from this little tunnel to like over here, and I never saw all this.
Wow.
But it was hardest right here. That's why people who are, you're right here, don't give up.
That's strong. What harvest are you believing for tomorrow?
Am I believing for tomorrow? I think now God has expanded my faith to see that how much can happen that you're not like over, that you, like I couldn't possibly take credit for, like because it, like maybe you could put me in the story, like like I had a role here.
Right.
So I mean, I want to be a part of. Dude, the first time I stepped on the actual property where the first orphanage was, and I saw the kids and I heard their stories, and I was like, I can't believe that God used me to do this. How many times can I do it? And it was like, I remember coming back from that trip, and it was like I was, I'm 30, thinking about my entire life. Thinking about, okay, if I'm 30, if I can do one of these every 2 years, how many can I, and if I live to 70, stuff like that. Because it's like, how many more times can I do this? Because this one act, like, has the meaning of my entire life in it. And like, so to even like perish in the service of that act would be worthy. So I feel like I just got to be spent up doing it. I don't know what that's going to look like, but I'm already blown away by what God has done. And I just want him to be able to keep doing that.
Bro, it's early in your journey. You're doing great things. I want you to hear that from an encouragement standpoint. You're doing great things. You're impacting a lot of people, and it's only like God sees you as a vessel and is seeing you as someone who's willing to go forth fearlessly on faith. Like when you said, hey, I'm going to sow into Ghana, to Ted, and all of a sudden, and then you jumped into the insurance. Like, you're not going to need the resource because it's always going to be in front of you once you make the decision. So kudos to you, brother. And man, I thank you so much for sharing and jumping on our Speak Life podcast.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. And just thank God for everything he's done in my life, man. I appreciate you and your mentorship. And it's always a blessing coming here and being a part of everything. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, brother. Well, everybody, Merry Christmas. Let's have a safe and healthy Happy New Year. And remember, speak life wherever you go. You never know, like Gabe, you never know who you're impacting when you're sowing seeds. Love y'all. Let's bring in the new year right. God bless you. Take care. Thanks, Gabe.
Thank you.